Hi, my name is Angie Woldridge, and this is my resurrection story. I was born into a family that was broken and dysfunctional. My mom was 16 years old when she had me. Her father had committed suicide when she was 2, and she'd had an abortion when she was 15. And then she had me when she was 16. She was already living on her own. And in the home that I was born into, there was drugs and alcohol, prostitution, parties, pornography, and just really, it would be like an R-rated place where you would never want a child to be. I experienced pain, neglect, abuse, in every area, every possible way that you could experience abuse. And then my grandparents ended up coming in and swooping me up out of that when I was 3 years old. And things got a little bit better, but it was still really hard because even they were on their 3rd marriage and it was still very dysfunctional. And it wasn't until I was 15 years old when I had this friend step into my life, and she loved me and she kept inviting me to church, and she's like, you gotta come to church, you gotta come with me. And at the time I was dating a man who was 7.5 years older than I was, and it was dysfunctional, and it was a private relationship. I didn't want my grandparents to know because I was involved in sin, and but because of her persistence I ended up coming to this youth ministry. Well, I ended up going to the youth ministry's camp, and at this camp is where I learned about Jesus. I saw these young people and they had their hands lifted and tears in their eyes, and I thought, maybe God is real. And I remember saying this little prayer, Jesus, if you're real, I want to know you. And as I lifted my hand to come forward to the altar, a presence I didn't know at the time, but it was the presence of God just came over me. And I remember I fell to my knees and I began crying. And I just remember feeling this incredible feeling. And I felt this voice say, I have a plan for you, and I want you to break up with your boyfriend. And so from that moment on, I remember going back, leaving this experience, feeling like, oh my goodness, I just met Jesus. God is real. And I remember going back and I told my boyfriend, God is real and we need to break up. And he wasn't so sure about that. From that moment, I began going to youth ministry and learning about this God. And then about 3 months later, as it would sadly happen, I ended up getting back into a relationship with this guy and stopped going to church. And I just went off the deep end, even more so, of drinking and just getting deeply involved in sin and just really going to a super dark place, feeling a lot of pain and also feeling convicted because I had met the Lord. And I remember my friend, she kept in relationship with me. She invited me back to church again and again and again. And I finally came back and I felt God's presence again so strongly, and I felt his love for me, and I felt like he said, you need to make a decision tonight. You have to decide. It's either me or him. And that night, I remember getting on my knees and I said, okay, God, I choose you. I want to follow you, Jesus. And from that night on, my whole world changed. Coming from a broken family of such dysfunction. I mean, the way I would describe my family is I just tell people, it's like the Jerry Springer show. That was literally like what it was like growing up in my family. But Jesus completely redeemed my life in every possible way. I remember him promising me that the person he had for me was so amazing. And you know what? I met the most amazing man. If any of you guys know my husband, he is incredible. Jesus redeems our lives, and he is so good. The plans that you think that you have for your life, though you think they may be good, I promise you, his are even way beyond better. I love Jesus. He's amazing. And if you don't know him, today is your day to trust him, to give your life to him. Thank you for listening.